Hello everyone and welcome to round 5 of Chess Olympiad 2024. We are covering India's run. So today India was playing Azerbaijan, who is a very strong team and has two 2700 players almost and two 2600 players who are very strong. They also have Nijat Abbasov, who was a candidate in 2024 candidates tournament that Gukesh won. So today, but surprisingly, the team order of Azerbaijan is a bit different. They have the strongest player on board 4 and the weakest player on board 1, which might sometimes work and sometimes backfire like it did today. So the first game is between Gukesh versus Ardin Suleimanli, who has been playing very good recently. But of course, Gukesh is the favorite. White plays e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4. The Italian game, knight f6, d3, bishop c5, bishop g5. So this is a very new kind of idea. Uh, I think the Adiban was the first person to make a course on this with for in his lifetime repertoire of e4. So White's idea is just White will just drop back to h4 and g3 if Black goes h6 bishop and g5, and then simply castle, saying that this bishop is here is very strong actually, putting pressure on the e5 pawn, threatening some kind of breaks in the future, and also defending its own king from any kind of pawn storms. So black goes h6 immediately, bishop g5, bishop h4, g5, bishop g3, d6, c3, a5. So a5 is generally played to stop white from going b4 and a4 and gain a lot of space on the queen side. White goes knight d2, bishop a7, a3. A3 is actually not the most common move. I think the most common move is castle, but Gukesh here plays a3 because he definitely has some preparation. And I think here Suleimanli is already out of book and goes wrong immediately with the knight h5. Gukesh here, as he's like well prepared in this position, goes knight e5, hitting the h5 knight. What black takes here, bishop f7, king f8, knight g6. If black goes king f7, white takes on h8 with a check, queen h8 and ag3. White says I've given up two pieces for the rook, but this two central pass pawn and white going d4 next just cuts off this a7 bishop and this c6 knight from coming into the game. But Aydin plays king g7, Gukesh plays fg3. So this is a very nice move with the f7 bishop hanging and g6 knight being protected by the bishop. White says if you take here, I'll just take the rook still. If you don't, if you go something like rook h7, I'll just simply go rook f1 and defend my f7 bishop. I'm two pawns up and clearly winning. So black has to go king f7, knight h8, queen h8 and d4. So this is the most important move of this variation because without this I think black had enough compensation to even might be better. But after d4 this bishop gets closed, knight gets blocked and white can easily castle and start its own attack against the black king. Black goes king g7, castle, bishop d7, king h1, rook f8, challenging the rooks, but actually he had to keep the rooks to keep the game going because as one rook comes off, this other rook is going to become much more powerful and it would just decide the game. White goes queen e2, takes, queen e8, queen f3. So now this weak king is coming under attack and still this minor pieces are out of the game and I don't have any idea how this bishop can even get back into the game because if for something somewhere like black can get knight d8 c5, white can just place d5 and just keep the bishop locked in. So I think the only way black might get any kind of play here is by sacking the bishop on d4, which is really not gonna help much without the piece. So black goes queen e7, stopping queen f6, knight c4, bishop e6, and knight e3. So the knight is going to f5 here, after which black will be forced to take on f5 with the bishop and give up its only minor piece that is active. Black goes knight d8, knight f5, bishop f5, e f5, queen f6, stopping f6, rook e1. Black goes bishop b6. I think here black should have gone definitely c5. The idea I had told earlier, like if white goes d5, then black can go c4, and finally this bishop opens up, and now black can have some kind of chances. But black goes bishop b6, which is just a bad move. White goes g4, and now he goes c5, d5, c4. But here, as white have already gotten this g4 pawn push, this f5 pawn is secure, and whenever this knight comes to f7, white can just go rook e6. So like a variation like knight f7, white goes rook e6, queen d8, f6, and it's just clearly winning. So this knight can't move. This bishop is not really doing anything on the diagonal. So black goes bishop c5, white goes a4, stopping any kind of breakthrough on the queen side, which will destabilize the queen side pawns and make some room for counterplay. Bishop a7, queen e2, and now finally this battery is created, entering the king side, and the 7th or the 8th rank, just winning the game. Black goes h5, desperation, rook e7, king f8, rook e8, king f7, and just takes here. So black still can't take on f5 because d8 rook knight is hanging, and there is actually no way to predict this pawn because white was threatening h6. If black had gone for something like bishop b6, white goes h6, queen h6, there is queen e7 mate, and if black just ignores, there is queen h5 mate, which actually there's nothing that black can do here. Black goes g4, h6, finally goes queen f5, but it's all over now. h7. It's actually great thing that this rook and queen is on the battery, because after queen d1, white can just drop back queen e1, and after takes, just rook takes, and this is just winning because king g7, white goes h8 queen, king h8, and rook e8, forking this king and knight and winning the game. So with this beautiful game, Gukesh wins the first game for India and takes the 1-0 lead. So we move on to the next game, that is between Praggnanandhaa and Nijat Abbasov. Abbasov played the 2024 candidate, so he definitely has a lot of preparation. But surprisingly enough, he goes for the London system against Prague, which is like, I don't really want to play for a win in it. So d4, d5, knight f3, knight f6, bishop f4, c5, e3, knight c6, knight d2. So it's common till now. Black goes for ed4, ed4, a6, stopping the bishop b5 ideas. Knight b3, bishop f5, bishop d3, takes, and e6. So although it started from a d4 variation, this has transposed into some kind of a Caro-Kann exchange variation. Like if this had come from this e4, c6, d4, d5, ed5, cd5, something like knight f3, knight c6, c3, bishop f5, bishop f4, knight f6, bishop d3, queen d3, e6, knight d2, a6, knight b3. So this same position has come from London here, which is really interesting. And black is actually fine here because after castles, black exchanges this only bishop, and after this exchange, there's only knights and queens on the board, which is nothing to worry about for black. Rook e1, castle, knight e5, queen c7, c3, knight e4. So this is putting pressure on the e5 knight. Black generally doesn't want to take on e5, allowing white to capture with the rook, because after that white can just double and go for something like f4, f5. So black always prefers if white takes on e5 with the pawn. So after c3, black goes knight e4, either forcing white to take on c6 or move back on f3. If white takes here, black will just take with the pawn, and with this capture to towards the center, I think black is just fine. But white plays a very dubious kind of move. I don't know why he played this, because he's really actually not trying for anything. He's just saying, I'm okay, I'll just defend a minus position with white. I don't want to ever win this game. But after knight e5, d5, knight d2, queen d2, the position is very drawish at first glance, but this is far from the truth, because even though the pawns are equal and there's only queen and two rooks, this structure is much more solid than this, because the e5 pawn is always going to be a target, and with the pawn on d5, black can go b5, a4 and b3, breaking open this c3 pawn, and if white takes here, black will get this very strong protected pass pawn, which is generally very good for black in the end games. So after rook c8, rook e3, queen e7, rook g3. So white definitely has to go for some kind of play on the king side, because there's not much white can do on the queen side. Black goes rook c4, rook e1, b5. So yeah, Pragg starts with the minority attack. White goes b3, rook c6, queen d4. Queen d4 is based on stopping b4. So after rook c8, white goes h4, saying that if you go, I'll just take back with the queen. Takes. And there is no really back rank threats here. But Pragg plays a5, saying I'll push b4, but with protection. h5, h6, stopping any kind of h6 ideas, which is very thematic in this kind of structure. Rook e3, b4, queen g4, queen f8, stopping the mate. Takes, and queen f4. So white has actually played very well after that mishap after knight d5, knight d2, and has created a very strong kind of attack on the king side. Black goes king h8, rook g4, rook c1, king h2, rook c2. Pragg is still not really caring for this, because he says you can go rook g3, you can even take here, but I'll just take like if he goes rook g3, he will take here, rook g7, rook queen g7, rook g7, king g7, queen f6, king g8, queen h6. Black can just take rook f2, and actually black has two rooks for the queen, and this queen and pawn is not really mating black. So white goes rook f3, hitting this. Black goes rook c7, and white finds the only good way to draw the position or save the game for white, because rook g6 is just a very nice move. With the help of this pin, white is threatening rook h6, and it's actually, there's nothing actually black can do, because white is also threatening rook e6 with the pin. So black has to move the queen from here, and after rook h6, which the chess.com shows as a brilliant move, but this is just the only move. I think they should have given brilliant move to rook g6. Queen g8, rook h6, g8, queen h6, queen h7, and queen f8. So it's a draw here. I think Pragg is being very solid on board 1 and holding his own against the best of the players, while Gukesh and Arjun is just giving India all the points. So with this game, we are at 1.5 and half, with Vidit and Arjun's game going, and we are at a very good situation. So we move on to game number 3, that is Arjun versus Mamedov, who is actually a very strong player. He plays a lot online. He is very strong in bullet and also classical chess. But Arjun doesn't care. He outplays him with an accuracy of 98.7%, which is just perfect play. So white goes e4, black goes c5, knight f3, d6, d4, cd4, knight d4, knight f6, knight c3. So Mamedov is a very attacking and sharp player. He plays a Sicilian, which is also the style of Arjun. So it's a very nice clash of similar styles. Black goes g6, bishop e3, bishop g7. So this is a dragon variation. It's called the dragon because this pawn structure looks like the tail of a dragon. which I've never really understood, but yeah, what can we do? F3, knight c6, queen d2, castle, bishop c4, normal stuff, bishop d4, bishop e6, bishop b3, queen f5, long castle, all very normal theory. b5, king b1, b4, knight d5, bishop d5, e d5. It's actually still theory after move 15. Queen d5 is also theory. Queen d3, takes, and white goes for an equal endgame, which is technically not that equal because white has a bishop pair, this open e file, and this strong bishop on b3, guarding the king and defending the d5 pawn. Black goes rook c8, rook e1, rook c7, c3. So white had to go c3 because black was threatening some kind of a5, a4 ideas. White goes c3, a5, takes. Now this bishop is cemented here. Nothing can get this bishop out. What black might try is go something like king f8, rook e8, knight d7 and exchange this bishop. Or even something like knight e8 and exchange this bishop. White goes g4, rook c8, rook d1, bishop h6, h4, bishop f4. I actually don't understand this maneuver because I would have preferred definitely to go knight e8 and exchange this dark square bishop, which would give a lot of play for black, like these two squares. But this is also fine because black can get something like knight d7, knight e5. So after bishop b6, rook b7, bishop e3, white himself exchanges this bishop, which is another idea because with the bishop on f4, white really couldn't double and get his rook to e7. But without this bishop, white has now a lot of play. Black goes king f8, bishop a4. This bishop is coming to c6 now. Rook c5, bishop c6, rook a7, and g5. So this knight now has to go to d7 or to the side of the board, which is not really ideal. So black goes knight d7, white goes rook d4, hitting this b4 pawn. Black goes knight b6, white goes rook b3, e5, and white takes here. So black has to take on d5 because white just took one of its pawn. Knight d5, rook b8, king g7, bishop d5, rook d5, and rook b7. So this should be technically winning because these two protected pass pawn and connected pass pawns are much faster than this single pawn because this pawn is covered by the f3 pawn. Black takes here, takes, rook d4, b4, rook h4, which is just a blunder because now the a pawn just runs. a4, h5, g8, rook h6. So the very big part played by this pawn is it is covering 3 pawns. Like if black has to go for any kind of pawn storm, he has to go king g8, f5, g5, g4 and then get a pass pawn. Whereas white just pushes a5, a6, a7 and a8 queen. White goes a5, rook h3, a6, rook f3, rook b5, e4, a7, e3 and king c2. I think even a8 queen is just winning because even after rook f1, king c2 and e2, white has a very brilliant move, rook h5, which would have been amazing to play over the board for Arjun, but he really doesn't need to show off because king c2 just wins by force immediately without even allowing e2 and e1. So after rook h5, the line was gh5, queen g2, king f8 and queen e2 with queen versus rook, and this pass pawn white is just clearly winning. But after king c2, black resigns, and with this India has won the match with 2.5 with Vidit Game still going, which was actually the most interesting game of this round. So Vidit was playing Mamedyarov Shakir, so who is the #1 player of Azerbaijan. He's rated currently 2733. So he's actually higher than Vidit, but he was actually one of the best players of the world a few years ago. He was above 2800, if I'm not wrong. His highest is, I think, 2816, and he was among the world's best. But now he has gone a bit down, and this was the most dangerous board for us. So Shakhriyar goes knight f3, d5, g3, c5, bishop g2, knight f6, castles, g6, d4, cd4, and queen d4. So queen d4 is a relatively new move that I've actually seen for the first time. White mainly goes knight d4, and next follows up with c4 and get some kind of Grunfeld structure. But queen d4 is the first time I've seen this. Bishop g7, rook d1, knight c6, queen f4, castles, knight c3, bishop f5. So white is directly going for the d5 pawn. It's saying if you want to protect this, you have to go e6. After that, I'll go e4 and again put pressure on the d5 pawn with this pin. But black says no. I'll go bishop f5. The interesting part is white is still in preparation here because he has 101 hour 32 minutes, while Vidit has only 1 hour. So Vidit is playing on his own. White goes knight e1, queen d6, knight d5, knight d5, bishop d5, rook d8. Here, I think white is now out of book. White should have gone e4, but he goes wrong and plays c3. Not really, I can't really say this is a bad move, but this allows a brilliant move from Vidit, which is bishop d4. Oh my god. Bishop d4. So this is not just a brilliant move, it is also a very shocking move for white. I'm sure white didn't expect this because the variations here like bishop c6, black can just go bishop f2, discovered, and take the d1 rook, queen d1 and bc6. So bishop c6 is not possible. If white goes cd4, then black goes rook d5, hitting this, threatening e5 himself, and with this all pieces out and coordinated, white is in for a bad time. If white had gone e3 here, which is another like brilliant move, I don't know what to call it, but at least a brilliant looking move. But black can here just simply go rook d5, ed4, rook f8 and still go for d4 and have a very good position. And we've finally come to the main move here, that is bishop f7, that was played in the game. Black goes king f7, takes, and knight d4. Even though white is a pawn up, but this pieces are so strong and active, white is in real trouble here. White goes knight f3, knight e2, king g2, knight c1, rook c1 and queen b2. So even though black was playing on its own, after the opening, black has managed to equalize. Not just equalize, I think black is now pressing. And white is in a lot of danger here with this dark square weakness and the light square weakness and the bishop on f5. White goes rook c7, queen f6, rook b7, king g8, rook a7, bishop d7. I think if okay, queen d7 is just not working because of queen f3, and most probably I think white should have gone for this because after king h3, black would generally take the draw here. But I can understand why Shakhriyar didn't go for this because this board was the only board where white would be pressing. But if Vidit equalizes this game also so easily, it's very bad situation for Azerbaijan. So white plays queen b3, bishop e6, and he goes queen b7, which is a big blunder. He should have definitely gone something like queen d3, stopping queen d5 and queen f5. But I think he missed queen f5 here, which actually Vidit almost found after 5 minutes of think. The simple threat is just bishop d5 and white really can't do anything to protect prevent black from going bishop d5. So white goes rook a8, the only way to get some counterplay. bishop d5, rook f8, king f8. And with this battery hitting the f3 knight and no pawns to guard this, white is in real trouble. White goes queen b8, king f7, queen f4, e5. Here after e5, you might think that white is just exchanging the queens and white is a pawn up in the endgame. What wrong can it go? But the problem with white is, even after exchanging the queens, he really can't untangle from the pin, because if he goes g4, white just black just takes here. If he goes h3 to prepare g4, black just plays h5, and he can't untangle. And for this is like a very interesting position. If white goes something like this, black just waits. a5, bishop d5, a6, bishop c6, a7, and bishop a8. Now white is just in zugzwang. White has to play a move, g4 just loses. h4, black will again make a move, and white is still in zugzwang. g4 still loses, a8 queen takes, and finally the white king has to move, which forces, which just loses a piece. So white goes queen e3, black goes g5, h3, h5, threatening g4, queen a7, and here I think Vidit went wrong. The simplest was just king g8. If white goes queen b8, black just drops back with queen f8, with the same idea that if white takes here, king into f8, and this is a very well-known position. I think Anish got this kind of position with reversed color a few years back. But the problem here is, even though the pawn is not an f5 controlling g4, even if white goes g4, black can just play h4. And still the white king can't go to g3, getting unpinned. So it's the same variation again. a4, bishop c6, a5, bishop d5, a6, bishop c6, a7, bishop a8. And again it's a zugzwang. King moves, drops the knight. And if after queen b8 and queen f8, white doesn't take here, go something like queen e5, then it's just mate in 3, queen f3, king f1, queen d3, queen e1, bishop c4, and just loses the queen. But black goes king g6 here. He actually didn't. This is actually really tough to decide during the game, because it kind of looks same, king g6 or king g8, because this queen d6, black he thought black can just queen f6. But the problem is here white can go queen e3, which was not possible from b8. But after king g6, white goes queen a6, which is just same idea. King g7, queen a7, queen f7, and here white goes queen e3, protecting the f3 knight and threatening queen g5 or queen e5. Black just plays queen f6, which is the biggest blunder of the game. After playing such brilliant moves like bishop d4, king f7, queen f5, Vidit misses this simple move, queen f5. I think why he didn't play this, because he thought it's the same thing again, queen a7. But here also again he missed this queen g8 move, after which this is just game over. And with queen f6, white gets the one lifeline to save his life, g4. Here the problem is black can't really go h4, because now white is not going to be in zugzwang, because he always has the queen to make a move. So after g4, black takes here, takes bishop c6, getting this protected by the queen. Also, you might think that white is now a pawn up. He might even try it for a win, but it's not the case, because if white goes king g3, black has queen f4, takes, king g2, and again it's that same position, zugzwang, where black will just move the bishop and finally take the knight. So white goes queen c3, king h6, queen b3, bishop e4, queen e3, bishop c6, queen b3, king g7. Black just repeated a few moves to reach move 40, and now black is coming to save this bishop. King f8, a4, king d7, king e8, a5, king d7, queen d3, king c7, queen a7, king d6, queen d3, king c5, queen b3, If white had gone queen c3, then king b5, and white is now in against zugzwang because king g3 runs into queen f4, and any kind of check will run into king into a5, losing the pawn. So white had to go queen b3, king d6, queen d3, king c7, queen h7. They're just repeating moves here. Queen g8, king b7, check, check. And here black goes queen f5, threatening queen f4, queen g4, but white has this nice move king f1. Black takes here. White takes takes the e5 pawn with check, king b7, queen b2, king c8, queen h8. And this bishop is not really strong enough to protect this king from checks. King d7, queen g7, king e6, queen g8, king f6, queen h8, king e7, queen g7, king d6, and they played a lot of moves like this. White took the pawn, and so there was no mates, and black can't really win the game with just queen and bishop. So after around like 20 moves, white finally managed to exchange the queens here, and it was a draw. A sad game for Vidit, but a very good result for India, winning 3-1 against such a strong team like Azerbaijan. India was actually on the verge of getting 3.5 half, but yeah, it's fine. 3-1 is enough. And with this win, India has won their 5th match also with this huge margin of 3-1, and is now currently leading in the Chess Olympiad with 4 other teams: China, Vietnam, and Hungary. Tomorrow, India is playing against Hungary, the home team. I think again India is like the clear favorites because Hungary is not really that strong, and hopefully India wins again tomorrow. And if you guys like this kind of content and want to see more of this, please just like and subscribe. And if you guys have any kind of suggestion to improve the videos, or would like to see more of something else like analyzing my games also, just write in the comment section. I'll try to improve. And see you guys tomorrow with the recap of round 6, India vs Hungary. See you. Bye bye.